Welcome back to another Speedpaint. Today we've got the art process for a recent digital drawing I did of someone sitting for a nice little portrait. It doesn't have a title. Most of my pieces don't have titles, really, unless they're being shown somewhere, and then my hand is kind of forced because most galleries or events in general that show your art will ask you to submit a title alongside your pieces, so I don't know. I usually just say something really lame and obvious, but sometimes I like to use it as an opportunity to set up a little puzzle for the viewer. There's a mango painting I did. It's a physical painting. It's acrylic, and it got shown at my university for a year in this little art exhibit, and I named it 27 mangoes, and it drove people crazy. I had people emailing me the entire school year, really frustrated because they couldn't find the 27th mango. So that was kind of fun. But anyway, yeah, so today's piece is, I don't know, I really don't know what inspired it. The issue with a lot of my art is that it's not the process I go through is not, I think of something that I want to intentionally express, or it's not like I have an argument I'm trying to make and I'm thinking, well, what are some symbols that I can use to express this? I'll kind of just be walking around or doing anything else, and then I'll just get a flashbang of an image in my head, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's my next piece. That's not to say there isn't any symbolism there, but I guess it kind of is more of an automatic, subconscious kind of thing than an intentional, oh, I'm gonna do this kind of a composition, and I'm gonna try to use this color palette. I don't know, I guess my brain has clearly things that it gravitates towards, because the things that it gives me to draw tend to, resemble each other in some kind of a style, but yeah, I don't know. I just kind of get little images, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's my next drawing. Obviously, of course, unless I'm, doing a study of something, in which case that's a very intentional process. But in this case, the idea was someone sitting for a portrait, which brings me to something I want to talk about today, which is the idea of using references in your art. I've had a very changing relationship with the idea of references in art throughout all the time that I've been drawing, which honestly I guess is my whole life. So I guess throughout my whole life I've had a very changing relationship to the idea of references. When I was little and I first became really interested in art, so maybe second grade is when I first really started wanting to be an artist and all that. Back then I was really into pretty much exclusively realism, specifically animal realism. I loved drawing just the kind of photos that you would see in National Geographic animal encyclopedias, probably because I owned about 17,000 of those, but that was the kind of stuff I liked to draw. And because I was so focused on making things look as realistic as possible, of course I had to use references. And it would always be like a one-for-one kind of thing. I would find a photo and it would be my object to recreate that photo as best as I could, which was fun, and I still find it really fun. I like doing studies. I think it's good, but after a while I kind of felt a little dissatisfied because there wasn't a lot of stylistic expression in that. It was kind of like I was trying as hard as I could to become a copy machine. And I was like, okay, what's the point of this after a while, Once you achieve the ability to do things realistically, it's I don't know, I guess it felt a bit like a dead end, so I wanted something different. And then I discovered the art side of the internet in middle school, and I got really into cartoons. Of course, that's kind of just what you get bombarded with if you're a middle schooler and you discover that there is art on the internet. So then I started drawing cartoon animals, dragons, trying my best to draw cartoon people, but they really usually didn't look like people at all. And at that point, my new objective was to, I guess, separate myself from using references, because I had conditioned myself at that point into thinking it was a form of cheating. I was just copying something else. And that's because I guess I was, you know, I mean, it wasn't cheating, but I was copying something else. So of course it felt like I was copying something else. But for some reason, I didn't really think very much about the idea that there are different ways to use references, you know, they don't have to be just a one-for-one, like, okay, if you use a reference, that means you are transferring this photo onto paper with your art supplies. You know, there are very many different ways to use references, and they can be tools. They can be tools that help you keep things like anatomy consistent, because the truth is that as humans, our visual memory is just not that strong. You know, try as we might, it's pretty much impossible for us to memorize completely and, you know, understand the physics of how objects move and then be able to draw that realistically alone without any kind of reference. So, you know, there are ways to use references in a way that isn't one-for-one copying. You know, you can have a pose reference that gives you information of how the hand might look in this sort of a pose, but that doesn't mean you have to draw the rest of the image exactly like that. You can still be creative, you can do your own ideas, and you can sort of piece together a lot of different references for drawing one piece of art. But because I usually have such specific ideas in my head of what I want to do, it's very difficult for me to just be looking on the internet and find exactly what I'm looking for. And because of that, the majority of the time what I do nowadays is I just make my own references. So I'll just literally pose myself however I want to, and then I will try with local furniture and a lot of rubber bands to position my phone in such a way that it'll capture the angle I'm looking for. And sometimes I'll employ my poor family members or friends into, you know, posing the way I need. And I found that extremely helpful, because at a certain point, either A, you're just not going to find what you're looking for, or B, you're going to find something that does look, you know, pretty close to what you want, but it's one of those 10 Pinterest images that every single person looking for references sees, and suddenly you find yourself recreating kind of the exact same composition that everybody else has already done looking at those images, you know. No, honestly, at this point, I pretty often will be just looking around art and I'll see someone's drawing and I'm like, okay, I know exactly what photo you used from Pinterest as a reference for this. And there are a couple of those, but one of them is that, I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but that one with like, it's someone with like a traffic cone on their head. I don't know, there are just a couple of those photos that have become so recycled that, I don't know, I feel like it can kind of gnaw away at wanting to create an original looking piece. So that's why I really prefer to take my own reference images, which feels weird because I don't particularly like being on camera very much. I've never been like a photo shoot person, you know. I've never been the person to be out and then be like, oh, you know, I want to get a picture of myself here, like someone take a picture of me. I don't know, I just don't really like it. So it felt really weird at first, especially since I'm kind of taking the pictures myself and because I'm usually in very dramatic poses, but it's been really helpful in conveying what I want to convey in my art. And this is one of those pieces. I just took a picture of myself sitting for a portrait and that's what I use as my reference, and then I kind of just went crazy with it after I got that anatomy down. So yeah, I hope you enjoy looking at the process. Thank you for watching, and I hope I see you in the next video.